He never believed in miracles. He had laughed at the stories his grandmother told him. Stories of spirits that could bless or punish, of curses that could follow a man like shadows, of whispers from the trees that only the wise could hear. He had grown tall and strong, seeing himself as a man of reason, a man who laughed at old women who muttered prayers and warnings. But that Sunday morning, something he could not name drew him to the church. The sun was soft on the dusty streets of Mabila village, the sky painted in warm golds and soft oranges. The church doors, usually closed and quiet, stood wide open. He paused at the entrance, hearing the gentle ringing of the bells, each toll heavier than it should be, echoing in the air like a question. Inside, the smell of candle wax mixed with the faint aroma of flowers and wet earth. Children ran past the pews laughing softly, but the sound carried a strange weight, almost like a warning. He moved through the rows, keeping to the shadows, his heart thumping. Each step made the floorboards creak underfoot, loud in the stillness. His eyes roamed across the faces of the congregation. Some bowed their heads in prayer, eyes closed, whispering words he did not know. Others stared ahead, solemn and silent. The priest stood at the altar, robes flowing, voice steady but strange in its calmness. Then the call came to receive communion. A wave of nervousness swept through him. He was not one of them. He had never prayed, never confessed, never knelt in this sacred space. His heart told him to stay seated, to walk away, to laugh at the idea. But his feet betrayed him, carrying him forward as though guided by some invisible hand. When the priest extended the bread, his fingers brushed the man's hand, and warmth flooded his chest. It was not ordinary warmth. It spread quickly, a fire that did not burn but made him shiver, made the air around him thick. The bread was small, light, and yet as he swallowed it, the world around him shifted. The walls of the church seemed to breathe, the sunlight through the windows twisting into strange patterns, the faces of the congregation momentarily changing into something he could not name. Faces of fear, sorrow, and longing all at once. He returned to his seat, trembling. The whispers of the people around him seemed to carry hidden meanings. He tried to steady his breathing, but a sharp vibration ran through the floorboards into his legs. Outside, the village already reacted. He stepped out after Mass and found the sky darkening unnaturally. The wind carried voices, or maybe they were in his head, accusing, questioning, warning. In the market, traders shouted at each other for no reason. Knives fell from stalls, goods scattered, goats ran into the main street, barking dogs chased them. Even the river nearby churned as if angry. Fear clawed at him. He remembered his grandmother's stories, the spirits that follow those who touch sacred things uninvited. He tried to leave the village, to get home and hide under his bed, but even at home, strange things followed. His room smelled of incense, though he had burned nothing. His reflection in the mirror blinked at him differently than he did. Shadows moved behind the furniture, long and slow. That night sleep was impossible. A whisper came from beneath the bed. "You cannot run. You do not belong." By the next morning chaos had spread. Children were crying without cause, old men shaking their fists at invisible enemies, and neighbors who had laughed and shared food now refused to speak. In the church, candles toppled themselves, and the priest's voice trembled. He realized that the warmth in his chest was not just a memory of communion. It was alive, pulsing, and tied to the unrest around him. He could not understand it. He had mocked belief his whole life, yet here he was, watching the world bend to something beyond him. He remembered the last words of his grandmother, murmured years ago as she rocked in her chair. "Some powers do not need your belief. They only need respect, or they will make you pay." With trembling hands, he returned to the church. The priest noticed immediately. "You received communion," the priest said, calm but firm. "You are not one of us. You must confess, or the world will not settle." Confession felt like tearing open his chest, exposing everything inside. He knelt, voice trembling, and spoke of the warmth, the visions, the village chaos. He described the sky darkening, animals running wild, the whispers and shadows. The priest listened silently, then raised his hand and made the sign of the cross. He whispered prayers in a low voice, words foreign to him yet soothing, carrying weight. As he prayed, kneeling there, he felt the warmth retreat from his chest, settling into a gentle glow. The visions faded. The village calmed. Children stopped crying. Neighbors smiled again. The animals returned to their places. Sunlight fell softly on the earth as if forgiving him. He left the church a different man. Not because he believed in miracles fully, but because he had touched something he could not explain and lived. He still questioned everything, but a quiet awe now lived in his heart. His grandmother smiled knowingly when he returned home, eyes twinkling. "Now you understand," she said softly, "that the world is wider than your laughter." From that Sunday he never mocked the stories again. He listened when the elders spoke of spirits, blessings and curses. Though he still walked the paths of reason, he carried in him the memory of communion, of warmth, of a world that trembled and healed because of one small, uninvited act. And in Mabila village, people whispered of the man who had almost broken the world, and how even disbelief could not escape the reach of the sacred. But the story did not end there. Weeks passed, and he noticed subtle changes in himself. At night, shadows still lingered longer than they should, stretching across his walls. When he walked past the river, he sometimes heard laughter that was not his own, whispers of prayers from mouths unseen. He felt connected to things he could not name. Even the simplest act, stepping on a leaf, touching a door, sent shivers down his spine, as if the world remembered what had happened that Sunday. He began to dream of strange things. In his dreams, the village was upside down, rivers flowed backward, and animals walked as men. He saw faces he did not know, shouting warnings he could not understand. Once, he dreamed of his grandmother as a young woman, standing in the middle of the river, holding a candle in each hand. She looked at him with eyes that knew everything. "You have touched the sacred without knowing," she said softly. "Respect it, or it will reach farther than you can imagine." In the waking world, small things reminded him of the communion day. The morning sun sometimes spilled through his window at odd angles, shadows pointing toward places he could not name. Birds gathered on the roof of his house, silent and still, watching him as if he were prey. He could not speak of it to anyone. Words seemed inadequate. Even the priest shook his head when he tried to explain the lingering warmth and the visions, saying, "You must walk carefully now. Some doors, once opened, do not close easily." The village slowly returned to a calm routine, but he knew that beneath the surface, things were different. The people did not remember all the chaos, but their eyes sometimes flickered with unease. Animals behaved strangely. Children whispered about shadows in the corners of rooms, and even the river seemed quieter, holding secrets in its depths. He visited the priest regularly after that. Each time, he confessed not sins, but fears, visions, and the strange warmth that returned without warning. The priest would pray, give advice, and leave him with a quiet warning. "Do not test the limits. Respect what you touched. Faith is not always required, but respect is." Months later, he walked through the village market and noticed a small child crying near the river. Without thinking, he reached out and touched the child's shoulder. The warmth from that Sunday returned, gentle now, comforting. The child stopped crying, smiled, and ran off. He realized then that the touch of the sacred could heal, but it demanded care, respect, and humility. From that day he lived cautiously, aware that the world held powers beyond understanding. He still laughed at trivial things, still questioned the stories of old women, but he no longer mocked them. In quiet moments, he would remember the warmth in his chest, the chaos that had touched the village, and the day he had almost broken the world. He had learned that disbelief did not protect anyone. The sacred did not ask for belief. It asked for respect. Even years later, when he walked past the church, he felt a gentle pulse in his chest. Not fear, not pain, but a quiet reminder that life was more fragile, more mysterious than he had imagined. The villagers whispered of the day the man received communion without faith and the strange events that followed. Some called it a miracle, some a warning, but all agreed on one truth. Some powers are beyond understanding, and even the skeptical cannot escape them. He smiled at the memories and the whispers, knowing that life had changed him forever. And though he had never believed in miracles before, he now knew that the world had secrets too deep for laughter, too heavy for doubt. That Sunday had marked him, and the village of Mabila would never forget.